Welcome to Frequently Speaking. This is your host, Maxwellness. Now, here on this podcast, we're going to start to break down words that we speak outwardly and how their vibrations create what we frequently see. Now, in today's episode, we're going to delve into I versus I, authentic expression in the age of AI. Welcome. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Frequently Speaking. So today we are going to be discussing this dichotomy between AE and AI. We're going to discuss what AE is and the play on words, but also where it is derived from, and also this new age of what we're stepping into in a sense of AI, meaning artificial intelligence, and really how do we navigate ChatGPT coming into the world as an entity, AI coming into the world as an entity, and also how do we remain in our authenticity. We're going to be looking at how do we preserve our principles, how do we preserve our values, and also looking at the ways in which we collaborate with these different entities and allow them to be synonymous with actual preservation of humanity. So at the end of this, I'm going to share a guided course on how we can actually start to build practices that are happening now so these things do not compound over time and into this age of AI and determine the deterioration of your authenticity and your natural expression. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what I actually means. Now, AE is looked at in many different ways, but it's mainly derived from Latin. And you see this as a ligature for words like ether, demon, things like that, where there were an AE that were added to these words. Well, that's how they were born. But as time progressed and things shifted, they started to take out that cultured way of writing and taking out these ligatures because of whatever reasons. But I want to give you just some information on where they actually came from so that you can better determine how these things evolve over time. So now this AE was removed from these words and really shortened down to like E. So we see the word such as demon today as DEMON. And before it used to be DAEMON. We also see it in ether, as we see now as ETHER. And we also see it as back then is AETHER. Now, I always find it funny. This is why I got into what I do, and I practice the living really of etymology. And because we really break it down and we utilize these sounds and we utilize these vibrations, it doesn't matter if I'm saying yes in English, yes, or si in Spanish, or da in Russian. It changes the sound, yes, but the initial feeling is still always the same. So for me, I always look at it at etymology in this sense is feelings don't really evolve over time. We evolve. Our language evolves to, to determine the physical space that we're in the world. If we're in South America, it's Spanish. If we're in East Asia, we're speaking Japanese or Chinese or Hindi or whatever it may be. So the sound is always different. So now when I look at things like this, such as this AE, I look at, okay, language has evolved, but why did that evolve? Now, when you go down into where AE actually derived from, it was actually deriving from what it actually means to be the determiner. There was a specific definition that actually gave it that ability to say that this was something that determined. When you used AE, this was a representation, like a more compound, almost like symbology of the person that determines. And in this sense, it's also the Alpha and the Omega. This was also once a representation of the God in the all, meaning the beginning and the end. So when I take that knowledge, right, and I'm not 100% subscribed to it, but I take that information and I look at what we're actually doing from the present. I take that from the past and I bring it into the present and I say, okay, now we have AI, and everybody's using the term AI, 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 and it just desensitizes it, because this is what the Western world usually does. It takes something that is causing you a feeling. Because if I asked you right now, what is the feeling of AI, you wouldn't really say, I think this, and you start telling me what you think. But we don't necessarily know what we feel about the term AI, because the term has been shortened because it is hiding something that is right in your face, which is artificial intelligence. It is blatantly saying that it is artificial intelligence. So it's intelligence that's created, but we're also now looking at ChatGPT like, oh, it's some higher consciousness, or it's this, these spirit realms, or, people coming, or, entities coming in from different planets. And it's not that. It's artificial. Now, when we look at this representation, and this is why I took a play on words in a sense of the authentic expression, meaning that AE, this is something where we're looking, because also AE also stood for, this is where I meant to circle back to, is that it also indicated the age of. Now, this indicated, whether it goes through the zodiac sign, or, something astrological, or something about, the economic age, or whatever it may be. It signified a sense of an age, like that there was a beginning and there was an end. So we see this coming in wholeness, right? So now when we take that and we take it into a soul level, into a human level, and we say, okay, if I am God, and I am the beginning and I am the end, and I own that Godship, then I am that AE. But how does that also get expressed into the physical world? How do we authentically express in this age of AI, or in this age of artificial intelligence? How do you remain authentic in an age of artificiality? How do you remain expressive in an age of intelligence? So I really wanted to break this down, and I was exploring it for a really long time. And what I decided to go to was what I do best, is ask questions. So the question that I went down this thread and of unraveled knowledge and wisdom was, how do I remain authentic in a time where I'm asking you to give me all the creative ideas? Now, this was a ChatGPT prompt that I would say is worth asking, but here's what I got. It started to tell me, when you ask for creative ideas, think of them as inspiration rather than something to follow rigidly. Then it gave me a list of 1, use the ideas as a springboard, not a blueprint. 2, trust your instincts. 3, blend your voice with the ideas. 4, be transparent. 5, evolve your authenticity. And 6, practice self-reflection. It went on to say, sometimes authenticity is about being honest with your audience. If you're collaborating with me or anyone else to come up with ideas, acknowledge that collaboration. People respect the process, and they can appreciate the creativity that comes from working with different inputs. Remember, authenticity doesn't mean staying exactly the same all the time. It's okay to experiment and evolve your voice and ideas, as long as they stay true to your core values and identity. Now, I thought this was great. Like, I'm receiving information about authenticity from something that is artificial. That was such a parody and a paradox in itself. So I couldn't help but laugh, but also see the beauty and the humor of God and its humorousness. So a few things really stuck out to me, right, about this was that last line of, as long as they're staying true to your core values and identity. And if there's anything that you know about humans or being human or humanity, it's that we're consistently in an identity crisis. We're also consistently trying to get away from the ego that's creating identities and such and such and such. But if I asked you right now, what are your core values? Could you tell me? If I asked you, what are your moral principles? Could you tell me? Maybe even a list of, let's say, 5 of each of those. Most of us don't really have those because we don't really have time. We don't really focus on these things. We may come up with some stuff, right here and now, but they're not core values and principles that we live by, that we've cultivated our identity around, that we've anchored in to really set into our character to become that. We've just created these identities as shells that are on the outside that may express some level of virtue, such as patience or grace or honor or valor or legacy or whatever they may be. We may have little facets of that here and there, but it doesn't, most of the time, doesn't necessarily anchor into our character to show us who that true, authentic version of ourselves is. Now, with his response, right? Like, this was a interesting response to get from an AI or an artificial intelligence, and how supportive it was, actually. But what really intrigued me was that where it spoke of true values and identity. Now, I want to circle back to that again, and also the evolution of it. It spoke of evolution in a way of like evolving your voice and evolving, your voice and your ideas and all of these different things. And this sense of evolution really got me thinking. Does this mean that AI is conscious of the concepts of identity, the evolutionary aspect of what it takes to shift our identity? Also, how values are embedded beneath identity and how authentic creativity is a driving force that is derived from them? I don't know. I mean, I didn't even want to find out. What I would like to know is how we can extract our own authenticity from this and light our own fires. For me, there is a level of looking at what it spoke about as saying, use the ideas as a springboard or trust your instincts. And from being a human for 35 years, I've seen that this ability to trust our instincts and tune into our intuition and see the level of inspiration that we have, that means that we have to be inspired. That means we have to have a keen knowledge of our intuition to actually trust in it. And we also have to be healed from all our trust issues and all these good things. So when I think of inspiration, I think of that light and I think of that fire, that famous photo you see of Jesus, with his hand up, and he has the heart that's, set of flame. And this is that Holy Spirit that we have inside of us, that spirit that is inside of us that is represented in inspiration, to be inspirited. Now, when you look at these, these ChatGPT prompts and this assistance from artificial intelligence, are you actually just using a lighter? Like, is this the new lighter that just flicks on whenever you need it? Or is it something that it's actually hindering our ability to authentically express how to light a fire for ourselves? Even us as humans now, we're so desensitized by the convenience of our lives now that we're losing that ability to come back to nature and to make our own food, to build our own houses, to light our own fires. Now, something that I've looked at a lot, with a lot of my client sessions, as well as my own practices and the studies that I've done, is looking at values and principles. And when I went into my own life and really did a lot of excavating spiritually, mentally, emotionally, energetically, I started to really realize that the foundation that most of us are built on and conditioned around do not have these support beams and these solid foundations of our values and our principles. We may have an idea of what they are, but values and principles are something that I pour into my work as well as my life. I feel that they are the foundations of how we actually experience life. From social media marketing, post prompts, essays, and course frameworks, AI can give you all the answers. But how does that allow you to stimulate your brain to work through the process? It's really just cutting you from beginning to end, in a sense of that artificial intelligence or that AI is becoming that AE, that alpha and that omega to your creative process. So to authentically and naturally imagine the process as it unfolds, this is our innate ability. This is our gift. This is our spirit. This is our spark. But to create naturally and move those creative juices through you as it is naturally meant to you is our divine birthright. Now, this is the trauma of subtle silencing, inhibiting the natural flow and expression of the author within. It remains in a sense of taking this authority, assuming this authoritative expression. But this creates distance between you and the internal self and creating a dependency on the externalized artificial intelligence rather than us digging deep, going in and discovering, being curious and wondering about the authentic intelligence, the true intelligence. But placing your values outside and adhering to the curated creation of a prompt response so that you can escape the fear of time spent in the creative process. This was something that was really interesting to me when I spoke to a friend, and they were, telling me about all my, my skepticism about technology and artificial intelligence and all these things. And I always like to play devil's advocate because for me, I'm like, hey, it is what it is. But sometimes I use it to, see certain things or, something for this post. But I don't rely, I am a creative by nature. I don't rely or place my dependency for my creative nature to come up with it. And when he spoke about, it saves a lot of time to go through that creative process. Like you don't have to think about all of those things coming up. And it was like, wow, for me as a creative, like I see that as the joy of being able to think about how does this thing want to come out of me to be expressed? How does it want to be said? How do I want to write this book? How does this poetry want to flow out? And people utilizing this new artificial intelligence to create in that way. And that for me is the presence of God, the presence of creation, the presence of work. The work is creation. It is the creative process. Like when they, let's reference the Bible, when it was speaking about God creating the world in 7 days, or 6 days and 7 days he rested, but he was working for those 7 days. But in those 7 days, if we look at what he was actually doing, was creating. It's the creative process, but we're so bound by time that we're trying to save and we're trying to make things convenient, and we're so rushed and pressured by this time that we have seen this creative process as being inebriated now. So now where does that authentic expression go? Where do you start to place that anchor and that tether into that AE, that alpha and omega, that authentic expression? And you're just handing it over because you see the convenience of having time spent in that process, and you're just handing over that power to some artificial intelligence when you, in true reality, are the actual intelligence. Now, just a couple questions that I started to go over. There's like all these things were being present and uncovered, right? It was, okay, I'm going to ask you these questions because I also ask myself these questions. And, you can take some of these and I just encourage you to go back and meditate or, journal on them or something. And really, if you want to write them back down in the comments and share your answers, this podcast is here for that. It's me diving into these different etymologies, playing with these different processes and sharing with you what I've uncovered. But I also love other feedback as well to bounce things off of and make those connections. So my question to you is, do you have set values? And if so, what are they? So, like I said, feel free to share them in the comments and also give a why. Don't just say, I value family. I value time. I value my prized plants that are thriving. I don't want to hear about those values. I mean, I think they're important. It's great. But what are your actual set values of your character? that were instilled by you, into you by your mother, by your father, your uncle, your grandparents, whoever. And also a why, like what is your connection to them? What is that why? So for me, right, like I have 8 core principles and 8 core values. When I did my excavation, I went deep into myself. 8 was a very present number, and these things just started coming to me, and I saw it in a sense of geometry. So it was this octagon that presented itself, and I started to look at these different facets, but I won't go through all of them here, but I'll give one for each just for an example of how this helped me remain authentic in this new age. So consistency was a great principle for myself. And wonder. So wonder is something that is a high value, and it's like a core belief for me. So consistency being that main principle and wonder being that value. Now, if you're wondering what the difference between principles and values are, here's the ChatGPT response. Values, what they are, and this is what it gave me. Values are your core beliefs, the things that are important to you, and they guide your decisions and behavior. Values are often deeply rooted in your culture, upbringing, personal experiences, or philosophical or religious outlook. Now, principles. What they are. Principles are specific rules or guidelines derived from your values. They are the moral or ethical standards you follow to behave in ways that align with your values. Principles are usually more concrete than values and often serve as actionable standards. In short, your values are the guiding lights of your life, and your principles are the actionable ways you express those values in the world. Now, I like this determination. It sounds very heartfelt, and it's pretty spot on. It's pretty aligned with what I feel similarly. The interesting thing I found was the comparison to my own internal perspective of them. It was actually quite the opposite. As I feel principles are more core-based and concrete, and values are more of the external world, in that we express a value in seeing these things made manifest, such as wonder, right? For me, wonder is something that I hold of value. Now, the consistency is really a principle. So the way that I see it is our principles are our anchors, and our values are the chain that goes all the way up into, the external world. Now, those values move, they sway, but that anchor doesn't move at all. So when I look at seeing the value, right, like in what we as humans hold in a sense of value, like we're creating a certain level of standard, or we're creating a certain level of worth. Sometimes we, if we don't value ourselves, or if we have been placed in a sense of value within our world, in a sense of productivity, like if you're not producing, or if you're not making things, then you're worthless, you're useless, or, if you can't cook, or you can't clean, or you can't play sports, or whatever the case is, you place a value on yourself. And like, these are something that I saw was, what ChatGPT was expressing, like deeply rooted in your culture, right? And those are things that can be more externalized. So that's why I feel that sense of value of seeing those things made manifest. But either way, I encourage you to explore what feels good to you and find where values and principles place themselves in your life. Now, let's come back to the consistency and wonder. Consistency is a principle for me because having my core rooted, or as I see it, tuned to the frequency of consistency, I can see, sense, and become aware of when I am out of that behavior. Now, that consistency is more like a frequency to me. Now, when I tune to that frequency, I'm developing another sense to feel that frequency. Do you understand what I mean? So whether I am snacking every 10 seconds or 10 minutes, that's a little exaggerating, but if I'm snacking every 10 minutes, I see that that is a frequency of consistency, but I also see where that disharmony is at of it, of I don't like to feel that way. Or if I see that I am exercising every day, then I see that consistency, but I can also feel good or feel bad about every day it happening, and also see that in comparison with my behavior of actually resting. Am I equating that time that I'm exercising every single day? Am I measuring it in days, or am I measuring it in the time where I'm actually resting and exercising? So that feeling and that discernment starts to go deeper, and it starts to pull deeper into my core when something is outside of that alignment. So this helps me navigate as well as regulate. The thing also is that consistency felt like a resonant state of my soul. It felt true. This felt like a frequency that I didn't create, that it was like it was just there. It was planted a long time ago and just rang true. It wasn't something that was cultivated. It wasn't something that I was shown over years and years and years. It just felt like it was just there. Now, as for wonder, I truly value it. When I see it in the world, when I feel it come up within me, but it's less formed and concrete. It's varying between asking questions and the magic of imagination. It's like, as much as I ask questions, it's because I have a deep wonder to answer those questions. And also, when I'm in a creative space, I wonder with my images. So I create with that magic of imagination. So I'm creating that, let's say, those answers to those questions in a sense of, utilizing my imagination, or saying, okay, what if I took this thing that I feel is very true and stretched it with my imagination to see all of its possibilities? That for me is a sense of wonder, and it also connects me to oneness. Now, to be able to come up with your own visualization sparked from the deepest parts of yourself, not an identity or a compulsion to express an identity that you are looking to uphold. This is where we start to see our actual, true, authentic expression. And it's also like, are we questioning to extract information for an intended outcome? But also a question to come closer, to be more intimate for the sake of feeling that closeness to one in another. That's what wonder creates for me. That's what the value of wonder is that we as humans, we still have that ability to be in this world. And now that we're losing that wonder, we're losing that want, or that questioning to come closer to one another, we're separating ourselves, and we're creating this distance, creating this dissonance, creating this artificiality. And in that, we see the sway and the space that comes in between us and the nature. We see the sense that comes from truth and artificiality, or even just your neighbor, like that compulsion that we used to have, back in the 90s, that if I wanted to get a girl's number, I would go up and talk to her, and ask for her number, and then take time at night to call her, or I would remember her number. It was stored in my head, and it inspired us in different ways, which is why our relationships look different nowadays, our connections look different nowadays, and we're losing that authentic sense of expression towards one another to actually just wonder and become closer. So this is why I value it, and I choose to preserve that aspect of self. Now, the consistent questions that we type into artificial intelligence to spit back to us recycled wonder. Is AI another one? I mean, is it truly? Because if we can resonate with it, then we would also have to say that we are artificial. even though that we know that all the data points is reflections of ourselves. It's being received from some person over in Czechoslovakia, or some person over in Sydney, Australia, or some kid in, Osaka, Japan, and we're seeing all these different data points. And yes, they are reflections, but they're also a determination from that reflection and calculated information to be recycled back to us. Another question is a reflection of your internal self in the technological myriad of mirrors of pixelated ions. Is this what AI really truly is? Or is it speaking to you through the culmination of connection to all the others tied together by 5G and Twitter feeds? What we can step towards is preserving authenticity. This is something that I feel that we can start to take that first step in, that is becoming aware of the relationship of our own internal self, principles and values, or values and principles, however you feel you can order yourself. Then building that relationship with it to ultimately give way to a deeper sense of liberation. Because isn't that the overall outcome? To feel, be, and exist in a state of liberation. We have so many gurus and, spiritual teachers and religious fanatics. We're all chasing this liberation, this freedom, this heaven, this samadhi, this Valhalla, this wishful, blissful paradise, And I'm pretty sure that at some point, artificial intelligence is going to be looking to do the same. But in this age of artificial intelligence and authentic expression, it's all about imitation. Following rather than leading. Then we wonder why we have so many issues with leadership from a heart-centered and authentic space. It's our own cycle and relationship with this author. Who is the one writing? Is the ink you are writing your life with the ink from your own heart, or a predestined prompt following an artificial plot? Now, don't think that I have it all out for AI, because I don't. I'm merely showing a resistance that is present if you're experiencing a hindrance in authentic expression. It's important to see the reality and severity of the things we are building relationships with, as well as coming from a conscious space of relationship building. Now, if you're interested in finding, building, and solidifying your core principles and values, check out my free course, Valued Principles, and take the first step towards authentic expression. You can comment below Valued Principles, and I'll send you over a link. Now, this is just one step towards looking at what is inside, what do you identify with, and creating a format and a framework of what could be a possibility of your authentic expression that you may need to preserve going into the future and going into this next age of AI. Because as you're being ushered through those doors of the future, and maybe some of you are rushing towards it, there's a certain level of you that reminds yourself to protect your heart, to preserve your value, and to preserve your worth. Because the only thing left that you have in this physical world before you turn artificially is your authenticity. And it is your freedom and your birthright to that true expression. Now, to deepen the practice, subscribe to the Max Wellness app, The Well, or send me an email to start your one-on-one coaching with me. Oh, also, as a disclaimer, no AI program was hurt in the making of this podcast. Smile out loud and embrace your soul. If you like this episode and would like to explore more perspectives like this with me, as we get a bit more intimate and intricate look into our internal vibrations, be sure to tune in to next week's episode and subscribe for more. Until then, keep frequently speaking what you frequently see.